First of all, I want to thank Nicole for having us today. I am president of the Social Media Club. I kind of took over that role the third-ish quarter of last year, and these are the types of events that we'd like to do, and we're glad to be able to partner the Ad Club and provide professionals in the area with different ideas and concepts around social media, blogging, how to use Facebook, Twitter, these types of tools to grow your business. I've been in public relations for 7 or 8 years now. I started in politics in the Capitol, was in the corporate world for about 4 years, and now I'm an independent consultant working on my own for small businesses and nonprofits. So what we're going to do today, Ryan and I are going to kind of kick this thing back and forth on how you can use a blog to grow your business, increase sales, and those types of things. So before we get into that, I'll let Ryan introduce himself, because that would be the best.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ryan Hanley. I work for the Murray Group Insurance Services. We're a 15-person family-owned agency over on Western Avenue. How I got into social media is about 4 years ago. I got into the business brand new. I'd been out of the area for 8 years, came back from college and having a job in Washington, D.C., and realized that I had lost my network. I grew up here, but those 8 years, most of the people had moved away or I had lost connection with them. And I realized that the only way that I could quickly bring back connections was to start having an online presence. So I started with LinkedIn, and my own curiosity brought me through most of the social networks and into blogging. Through that, I've kind of trial and error learned ways that you can not only have a presence online for your reputation, but also encourage engagement, subscriptions to your newsletters and stuff like that, which bring people back to your website over and over again, and ultimately convert those people into leads. And leads don't necessarily mean buying a product. It's whatever your business is. So leads, don't take leads to just mean someone clicking on a button and using PayPal to purchase something. That can be if a lead is an email address to you, or just a physical address or a phone number or something of that nature. That's what we want to get out of our online presence. So today we're going to go in relatively quick form through kind of the why, a little bit of theoretical type stuff as to why having a blog is important, and then we're going to do some how too. So you're going to be able to leave. I have some flyers here that I'll pass out as we go that will give you something to take away, so you won't necessarily just have your notes. You'll have something you can take away with you that will show you some actionable items that you can put into place in your own presence, and hopefully have some success. So how many people... yes, sir.
Oh, excuse me, Ryan.
Yes.
Just before you get started,
Yeah.
just one housekeeping item. Courtesy of the Social Media Club of Tech Valley, we have a couple of Dunkin' Donuts gift cards to raffle off this morning, so I'm going to pass around this little bucket, and if you'd like to put your business card in for the drawing, we'll have that after the presentation. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm also videotaping the presentation here, mostly just to work on my own presenting skills, but I'll have that on YouTube. So if there's anything on here that you want to go back and review, we can connect on YouTube and you can watch it, and if there's any value in that to you. So when we get started, how many people have a blog right now? Good. How many people have a blog because they think it's awesome and it's very important to their business? Nobody. How many people do it because they have to, either the boss tells them to, they think it's a necessity? Okay. How many people hate blogging and they think it's horrible and it's the damnation of our society? Okay. I usually get one or two of those. Okay, there they are in back.
No, my unit would like to do a blog, but
Yes.
the executive staff doesn't want to.
Okay, so that's a very good question. How do you make that type of thing happen? And I guess we'll just get it. We'll get into there. I was going to start someplace else, but that's an excellent question. That's when we get a lot. So there's a lot of different forms, and Joe's going to talk about this, but there's a lot of different forms of blogs. So a lot of times executive leadership is scared of the blog. You have this space out there, and everything you write is permanent, and they're worried about every word you write, and what if you have a typo, and what if you use the word guarantee in there? Oh my gosh, we're going to be legally obligated to what we say and all these things. So there are some easier ways to sell this, and it's that you could use Google Plus as a blog. It's a little less scary to people. It just, you could say I'm just communicating, but the format allows you to blog. I mean, blogging is, a blogger, the term that I use is, it's just a person that bangs on keys. You create words, the words form sentences, the sentences are your theory. Your theory adds value to customers, which drives engagement, which ultimately leads to subscriptions, which helps you convert them into leads. So it doesn't say it has to be on this page, or it doesn't have to be through WordPress or on your HTML website. You can use anything. Twitter is a blog. It's just microblogging. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we'll get into ways that you can try to duck through that. But really I want to start with the why, the kind of theoretical why we do this, and why a blog is important. And this will help you sell to your executive leadership as to why a blog is important. And I'm going to have Joe come up and talk a little bit about that.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. And feel free to ask questions or interrupt and throw out ideas or things that have worked for you in your blog, or any questions you have as we're going along here. But why? Why do we blog? Why do we want to blog? What is it about? I'm sure your executive leadership will ask the question, well, why? Well, it's your chance to tell your story. It's your chance to tell your public about your company. So, here, can you go back to that for a second?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's all right. To tell your story, control your message, and build your brand. So, how are those concepts achieved? Well, you need to reach your advocates, and your advocates may be your loyal customers, key business partners, your employees, and you want those people to be part of your network that's going to be telling your story. But who is able to best tell your company's story? Well, it's you. It comes from within the organization. You don't want consumer advocates telling the public your story. You don't want customers with bad information telling your story. You want to control your message. And as a public relations professional, this is one of the main concepts that I'm always dealing with and have dealt with throughout my career. What are you doing to control your message, to build your brand, to maintain your reputation? And a blog is one of the best ways that you're able to do that, to tell your company's story or your personal story, to grow a brand. So, and that speaks to reputation. And pretty much, I think when anyone thinks of public relations, they think of PR in terms of, oh, that's a PR disaster, what a PR nightmare. And that all goes back to maintaining an organization's reputation. So who's saying what, when, and where? Do you know what is being said about your organization, about your company, about your brand out on the internet? To have a blog gives you kind of a home base to develop a message and to strengthen your brand throughout the internet and throughout your own industry. Now, what's so important about reputation is it takes years to develop credibility, to develop a sense of, to develop a reputation, but think of how quickly it can go away. So during a time of crisis, during a time of need, you need those advocates that I spoke about before to help you kind of get through those muddy waters, so to speak. And that's why it's so important to have your message being told to your advocates. And again, the best way to kind of do that is through these different blogging platforms. Ryan mentioned some of them. We'll get into them a little more specifically. But and then this speaks to the story. I mentioned your company's story, but what do you want the public to know about your company? What do you want the public to know about you? how else but a blog? I mean, I wouldn't leave it to opportunities in media or press conferences or press releases to have full control of your message. I mean, there are strategies and concepts that we use in PR to make sure that when we're before the media or when we're printing press releases that our message is getting through. But the blog is your avenue directly to your customers, directly to thought leaders in your industry, key business partners. So the blog gives you that opportunity to control your message and have you tell the public what you want them to know about you, if that makes sense. Am I going too fast? Does anybody have? Okay. So, kind of like, and I think why this works with me and Ryan here is because from a public relations standpoint, my kind of strong student background is kind of the crafting of the message, developing the words around strengthening your brand and reputation, whereas Ryan has become, I'd say, an expert in kind of the nuts and bolts of getting that message out there through these different vehicles, through these different avenues. So, and that all starts with a story. I mean, what is it that you want the public to know about your blog or about your company? And in a little bit, I'll get into kind of the content creation and what exactly that looks like and kind of the tone and the voice of a blog. But I think we're on to why we're doing it.
We all have expertise. My expertise is insurance. Insurance is horribly boring. If I were to give you an insurance presentation, you'd all be sleeping right now. So it's the truth. People don't want to hear about insurance, but they do want to hear my agency's story. They want to know who we are. When you have an insurance problem, you're going to type into your computer. I'm going to type the word insurance into your computer. You're going to type, what is employment practices liability? And when that comes up, I'm not just going to regurgitate something they can find on a website that has information. I'm going to tell a story around why employment practices liability is important to their small business, how it affects their lives, and the things that they're asking, your clients are asking. You know what the issues are for your particular client base, and you know the things that they want to hear, not just the regurgitated off of Wikipedia information. This is what you do, how you display how you deliver your message, how you give your expertise to them is how they're going to apply that expertise to your business. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is there's a lot of insurance agencies. If we drive down Troy Schenectady Road, you'll drive by 4. What differentiates number 1 from number 4? It's the message. It's the message that you have and the expertise that you're able to deliver to them. Because that you all look like you know what you're doing from the outside. They all say insurance, auto insurance, come get a quote. They may have a Progressive sign out front. And from the outside, you have no idea which one is the best. How do you know? Which one do you connect with? Is somebody a huge mountain climber and spends a lot of time in a rural setting and understands farm risks better than any other person in the area? You have no clue. Number 3 could be able to insure your farm with the expertise that no other agent in the entire area could insure your farm with. But you have no idea which one is which, unless that person has a way to send that message out into cyberspace. Because if you own a farm, you're going to pull up your computer and you're going to type in farm insurance or how do I insure my farm? And if number 3's website isn't coming up to the top, that person's good. You have a 1 in 25, 1 in 4 chance, a 25% chance of that person coming to you. When you're the best solution for them. I'm number 3. I'm the farm insurance guy. You know what I mean? That's who I am. And I know that if someone with a farm comes to me, I'm gonna hammer that policy. I'm gonna make sure that they have all the little caveats to their policy that they need, so when something happens, they are properly insured. but I have a 1 in 4 chance of meeting that person because I don't have they don't know. Maybe my sign outside says farm insurance, but if that person doesn't drive down Troy Schenectady Road, then they have no idea that I'm there. And they could be going to someone else and having a policy written to them that's subpar, when you know that if you got in front of that person, they would want to do business with you. So having this piece of your business in cyberspace is very, very important. It allows people to know that you're an expert. So consistency, so you have this expertise and you write about it. You decide, we're going to do a blog, and you create one, you have your web designer pull something up, and he says, throw some information into this page, hit enter, and all of a sudden, bang, you have a blog. And that's fantastic. And day one, you're all jacked up, so you get out there and you write, I'm the best farm insurance agent, we can do this, and I bet you didn't know that you need this, and we've helped these 5 people, and look at my great testimonial, bang, and you send that out there, and it's this fantastic blog post. Except you never do it again. You do one, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to wait for the business to start pouring in, and my phone's going to be ringing off the hook. That's not going to happen. And the reason is, just like this networking event here, if you show up one time, people, they want to see your face. They want to know who you are. Is this person dedicated to what they're doing? Consistency shows dedication to what you're saying. So you don't have to post a blog post every day. You don't have to post on Twitter every day, social media, Facebook. You don't need to be there every day. You don't need to be there every week. What people need to be able to do is rely on the fact that you're going to be there on a consistent basis. So you may tell them right up front, I'm going to post once every other week. Look for me the 2nd and 4th Mondays of every month, and you're going to see a new piece of information on farm insurance that's going to blow your mind. If they can count on that, they know you're dedicated to it. They'll keep coming back. They'll want more, and they'll say, wow, this guy, he really knows what he's doing with farm insurance. He makes sure that we stay up to date on farm insurance. And that's what leads to the relationship that you're going to build with these people. So they're going to start to interact. They're going to see your message on a consistent basis, and they're start to ask questions. They're going to go, well, I have 4 horses, and does 4 horses mean anything different to my business or anything different to my farm? Do I have to insure that differently than if I have 2 horses? And you're going to go, absolutely. You can't write insurance with these 5 carriers if you have 4 horses, 3 horses, and that's it. Once you go to 4, they don't cover you anymore. And the person says, oh my gosh, I have that carrier. How would I have never known? They wouldn't have known if they went down the street. If you didn't consistently have your message on a blog in cyberspace that they could find, and they didn't build that relationship with you, they would have never asked you that question and would never have known that they were completely exposed. Okay? Now they trust you. All right? They've seen your message online. They've seen that you're dedicated to providing that message. They've built a relationship with you through asking questions, and now they trust that you know what you're doing. And once you have their trust, you have their business. Okay? Now they're going to say, I need to come in and see you. Okay? I know that you're here. I know that you're dedicated to what you're doing. I know that you are willing to form a relationship with me and ask my questions, and now I trust that you're the best resource for me. And all of a sudden, now the phone does start ringing off the hook, and dollar bills start raining from the skies, and you have to do everything you can to scoop them up and bring them into your business, because you have people's trust. And to a certain level, every brand that we personally buy from, we trust. It may be trust, may be formed like that. When I go on Amazon and I buy a book, I don't need to go through this whole process. I trust Amazon, and I make the connection, and I purchase the book. But with service businesses, especially with small businesses, that there's not necessarily that brand loyalty, the trust takes a little bit of time, and it takes this process. People have to jump these psychological hurdles to get to trust to make that purchase. So Joe's going to talk a little bit more about how you plan, but just as we're going through the rest of this, make sure that you remember kind of what we just went through and the hurdles that you have to get through, because it all kind of leads back to forming that trust.
Your blog is one weapon in your communications arsenal. It is not your press center. So often I see blogs where people take their company press releases and they put them on the blog, and that's a blog post. That completely defeats the whole purpose of a blog altogether. The purpose of a blog is to create information that's going to engage your readers, that's going to engage customers, it's going to engage your business partners to create conversation. Think of it like think of Facebook, for example. The good posts, the successful posts, the posts that are interesting get the most feedback, get the most interaction. Press releases yield zero interaction and zero interest from customers, and even today, barely do they generate any interest from media reporters. But that's for another time. But a blog is one weapon in your communications arsenal. Certainly, you have a plan. Maybe you develop a plan quarterly, maybe monthly, maybe weekly, as to how you're going to communicate to the general public. Yes, you will use press releases. Perhaps you have public events, but included in that needs to be what you're doing with your blog, what you're doing with your social media. Some of your posts to your blog or to Twitter, to Facebook, you can plan for. You can say we know that we have a product announcement in 2 weeks. We need to develop a strategy for what we're writing on our blog about that product launch. To go along with your press information, you may have marketing materials that you're distributing, and those types of things. But on the other hand, you may also have instances where a situation may arise where you can go to your blog to reach your customers, to reach your advocates, to reach your business partners in unforeseen circumstances. I like to use an example that Ryan has done recently. In his business, he derives value from putting out information when we know that weather is coming. So think of the value that brings to his customers, or maybe to even people who aren't his customers, and they see that, oh, okay, well, a couple of days before we know we're getting a big storm, here he is putting a video blog together on YouTube.
Joe, what he's talking about is before Hurricane Irene, I did a very brief video where actually I held my cell phone like this, and I walked around my house, and it was just 6 things that you could do around your house just to kind of batten down the hatches, right? Just from being an insurance agent and knowing the things, what wind and rain does to claims, I just walked around the house and I said, make sure this windows are locked, and it was 6 things that you could do very quick to make sure that you were prepared for Hurricane Irene. And that, I posted it at 4 o'clock the night before Hurricane Irene hit, and it got 670 views by the next morning. I mean, that's a message that I hope added value in the power that you can have by just giving a little bit of useful information to people through these different sources.
I mean, that video alone, think of the number of concepts that we've already hit on in terms of delivering value, expertise, relationships, just in that alone. And that was an example of something that maybe wasn't part of the communication of Ryan's communication plan, but because he has a blog in place, because he has his presence in place, he's able to literally almost at the drop of a hat reach a large audience of customers, business partners, and advocates. So particularly in times of not just in weather, but in Ryan's world, but think about in times of crisis. Maybe something's going on in your industry that could be affecting your reputation, even though you know nothing about it. You're getting phone calls from customers about perhaps a product recall. How is this going to affect? Could this recall affect my safety, my family's safety? Here's your opportunity to reach your customers so they can share the message. Because part of what we're trying to do, and I always like to kind of think of Facebook because it kind of happens at a micro level. But not only do you want that interaction, you want people to also to share what you're saying, to share your story. And it's always best to come from the source, that's why when you establish yourself as an industry expert through the blog, as Ryan was explaining, you then begin to develop that credibility. So during a time of crisis or during an unforeseen situation, you can go to your advocates because you've built a strong reputation, because you have expertise. You can go to your advocates, and they can share your story as well. I mean, these concepts apply to large corporations all the way down to single person shops. It's just that large corporations have tons and tons of money invested in these concepts, but that doesn't mean that they don't apply, at the smaller level. So voice, the power of personality, what resonates strongest with your audience. So this kind of goes into, now we're starting to think about how is it that we want to craft our message? What do we want to sound like? Ryan's already talked about the importance of establishing your presence and consistency. So how do you want to come off on your blog in terms of how you want to sound? What is going to, think about in your industry, what tone resonates strongest with your clients? And I'll use Ryan as an example again. Ryan's blog kind of takes on, well, describe your voice on your blog.
So, this is going to speak directly to and I don't have your name. Joanne. So this is going to speak to Joanne's question. 4 years ago, I went to my agency owner, who was also my father-in-law, and I said, I want to start a blog for the agency. And he said, go fly a kite. He said, you got crazy. So you don't know anything about insurance. What do you know about the internet? So I said, okay, being the determined man that I am, I said, okay, I'm going to start my own thing. So I started my own website, ryanhanley.com, where I talked about insurance. And I said, okay, if I can't brand myself the Murray Group, I'll brand myself Ryan Hanley, the insurance agent. And that's what I did. And I wrote very technical posts, and no one read them. It was awful. I said, I must be a failure. I said, I know I have these books. I learn about insurance every day. And I'm writing these posts. Why isn't my phone ringing? So I got a little fed up. And I started just writing the way that I talk. As if you were sitting across the table from me, and I was explaining your insurance policy to you. And that's how I wrote. And I occasionally made references to things in my life. My wife, the Buffalo Bills, working for my family, living in upstate New York in the weather, all these things that we would have conversations about. And all of a sudden, tick, 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 tick. You start to see this, the traffic starts to increase, and then people start asking me questions, and then I would get comments on my blog, like, and you can track these things, so I know I'm not crazy, but I would get people saying, like, I love the Buffalo Bills too, and then 2 weeks later I'd get a question for that person on his insurance. So these little things that seem so trivial and not corporate, it's not corporate, it's personal. But no one buys from corporate, they buy from a person. Even if you're buying from a big company, you have that person that you have the connection with. And your presence, though it needs to be professional, because we are professional, you don't want to be saying offensive things. I do occasionally curse, but I keep F out of my repertoire. But when you have personality, when it feels like there's another person on the other side of the screen, people really react to that because they feel like this person's talking to me. They're not talking to this, they're not just trying to puke a message to me. They're actually speaking to me and the things that I want. So that's kind of where we're going with that.
Which is what a press release does. That's why I made a point to say, keep the press releases out, because that's just regurgitating a message that's written by a PR hack like me that has no personality whatsoever. But Ryan's point is great because, again, when you have a personality, when you have a voice that's resonating with your audience, that is going to increase the likelihood that you're going to have interaction. On top of what I do for my own professional needs, I also am a blogger for the Times-Union. There's a built-in audience there, but it's interesting when you start with an audience, because there's so many people that go to the Times-Union blog site. and I've talked with the Times Union about this, about how you can lose an audience. You're given a certain window to kind of find your way, and then your kind of audience starts to level out. But in order for that to in order to keep your audience up, you have to connect with the people. You have to understand who your audience is. So I don't think we could sit here and say to you that everyone in this room should be following one particular way of writing, one particular way of speaking, because I don't know specifically who your audience is. So just as important as what you're saying is who's listening. And that's what I was kind of speaking to before. Who are you writing to? What are you saying? What do you want them to get out of what you're saying? And that all goes back to voice. And then we get into the choices. We kind of were kicking this around a little bit, but what's the Twitter and Facebook, those are blogs. I think a lot of people think of blogs and they think, okay, getting behind my computer, I'm going to write 400, 300, 400, 500 words. We're going to talk about this today, and this is a blog. I am now blogging because I wrote 300 words. Twitter is a blog. Facebook is a blog. YouTube is a blog. Those count as blogs. They're different platforms, but they are blogs. Now, I spoke before about the plan and that a blog is one weapon in your communications arsenal. Twitter and Facebook are as well. The most important thing about those tools is that your messaging is consistent. You don't want your customers to see you on Twitter saying things that are different than you would be writing about in your blog, or that you would be saying on Facebook, or posting things on Facebook that are outside the character of what you have established on your blog. So you want to maintain that consistency, because that also goes back to developing the trust, establishing expertise, building relationships, and also Twitter and Facebook happen to be terrific places to share what you write in your 300 and 400 word posts on your blog. So these tools used together, you kind of have. I always talk about like your communications arsenal, because there's so many different vehicles, but in order for you to get the most out of it, it's important to maintain consistency. And I think that Twitter and Facebook kind of allow you to kind of pull the main points of what you're saying, what you're blogging about, put it on Facebook, and then you can start to generate interest on your Facebook page, get people back to your blog. I don't think we want to get too specific on how all that works, but if you have questions, please ask.
Actually, I do have one question with regards to that.
Sure, go ahead.
Which I thought I heard earlier as well. Can you post to Twitter, Facebook, YouTube simultaneously, or do you have to go to each individual network and put that same post up?
No,
copy and paste.
Go ahead.
There are tools that we can connect with after on as far as what exactly, but there are tools that help you distribute your message faster versus just having to repurpose it. So each platform has its own methodology to it. You can, in Twitter, it's 140 characters. So a link, and as creative as you can be, right? It really is a creative space. People think, what am I having for breakfast? That's not what it is. It's how creative can you be in 140 characters? How interesting can you be? And that's tough to do on a consistent basis. Be creative and interesting and funny and informational and establish